Let's continue our discussion on some of the leading philosophers and their views on language learning. In the middle of 20th century, B.F. Skinner took Locke's idea of sensory input and promoted that all behavior is no more than a response to external stimuli, and there is no innate programming within a human being to learn a language at birth. So Skinner promoted that our language learning is subject to the input we receive through our experiences, and then there is no such thing as innateness which is present at birth. He further observes reinforcement as a central concept of behaviorism and as a central tool for controlling and shaping of behavior. He proposes that differences in learning experiences are the major reasons behind the difference in human behavior. According to Skinner, learning differences affect human personality. This means that people are the way they are because they are rewarded to be that way. He means that if a person wants to experience reinforcement, the person develops personality trait. The personality traits in a person developed through reinforcement that he receives from different experiences. Noam Chomsky proposed the theory of universal grammar, and it would assert nearly the exact opposite of what Skinner had offered in his theory. Where Skinner saw all learning coming from external stimuli, Chomsky saw an innate device for language acquisition. Now, Noam Chomsky proposed theory of universal grammar, which was evolved from his concept of LAD, which is language acquisition device, which he thinks is present at birth in the mind of any human being. This is quite contrary to what Skinner saw, that learning is developed from our reaction and response to external stimuli. Arguments in support of the universal grammar hypothesis include language universals, convergence, poverty of stimulus, no negative evidence, species specificity, disassociations between language and cognition, uniformity, maturational effects, neurological separation, ease and speed of child language acquisition. Let's discuss language universals first. It means that human languages are essentially identical and acquired in a similar manner. All languages share certain properties. For example, all languages have consonants and vowels. Convergence. Children are exposed to different input, yet converge on the same grammar. In a given speech community, they converge on a very much the same grammar by the age of about 5 years. Poverty of stimulus means children have linguistic knowledge which could not have been acquired from the input which is available to them because it's a limited input, and no decisive evidence is given to them from the environment. In some cases, there appears to be no evidence at all. The next argument says no negative evidence. It believes that children know which structures are ungrammatical and do not acquire overgeneral grammars in spite of the fact that they are not exposed to negative evidence. Children can rely on corrective feedback from adults when they make a grammatical error, but have no way of comprehending or understanding the fact that if a response is intended to be a correction. Species specificity. It means that we are the only species that has language. There is something unique about human biological makeup that makes it possible for humans and only humans to acquire language. According to Chomsky, if a language is not innate, then there is no difference between human and animal language. Disassociation between language and cognition. Some clinical populations have relatively normal language and impaired cognition, and some have impaired cognition and relatively normal language. So there is no connection or association between these two. Uniformity. The uniformity argument says that children acquire language in a very similar manner, going through the same stages at approximately the same ages, in spite of the fact that they are exposed to different input. Children say their first referential words at 9 to 15 months. And for the next 6 to 8 months, children typically acquire single words fairly slowly until they have acquired approximately 50 words. So there's the uniformity among the children in terms of acquiring language. Maturational effect. Language is considered to be highly sensitive to maturational factors. It shows that indicates that maturational effects. Language is considered to be highly sensitive to this factor. It indicates that the language faculty develops or matures according to a biologically determined time frame. Neurological separation. Different brain domains are responsible for representing, processing linguistic and non-linguistic information. The last argument says ease and speed of child language acquisition. Children acquire grammatical systems of a language rapidly and effortlessly on the basis of very little evidence, which means without explicit teaching. It is assumed that language acquisition begins at age 1. The last argument in support of the universal grammar theory says ease and speed of child language acquisition, which means that children acquire grammatical systems of a language rapidly and effortlessly on the basis of very little evidence, which means without explicit teaching. It is assumed that language acquisition begins at age 1 and ends at age 5. Now we have John Schumann's acculturation model. It describes the process by which immigrants pick up a new language while being completely immersed in that language. It focuses on the social and psychological aspects responsible for our success. Now, this model focuses more on the social aspect of language learning and the social aspects and the psychological aspects which facilitate language learning. Two types of acculturation are proposed as per this model. Number one, the learner is socially integrated with the target language group and as a result develops sufficient contact with target language speaker to enable him to acquire the target language. In addition, he is psychologically open to the target language such that input to which he is exposed becomes intake. Input refers to the knowledge that an environment offers, whereas intake is that particular amount of the input that a learner successfully processes to build up internal understanding of a language. So to conclude, B.F. Skinner, Noam Chomsky, and John Schumann proposed theories for the understanding of behaviorism, nativism, and social aspects of language learning.